Hey guys, Jethro here. I'm here to tell you all about Tonysaurus Rex's YouTube channel. You can see all me and more of me on the main event and main attraction. I'm all over his YouTube, so you should definitely check it out. You just look up Tonysaurus Rex on YouTube, look for the image with the dinosaur, and you'll find it. You can check out his most recent horror short film called The Wandering Soul, where I make my debut by possessing his body. And you can also check out my recent episode of the podcast, episode 05.5. I am the main event on that and the last person that he talks to. So be sure to head on by and check it out. Just throw out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 6 of Everything But the Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tonysaurus Rex. In just a few minutes, we're going to throw it away to an exclusive interview with the independent artist Leanore. Leanore also has a Twitch channel and a YouTube as well, and she is working on a comic book of her own called Troll Smasher. She has also worked on some recent watercolor paintings called Beautiful Monsters that are really interesting. I'm going to have her drop the links during the interview, so you guys should definitely check out her work. She's really cool. This interview was a lot of fun. I think you guys will enjoy it. So we don't really have any announcements or anything like that. So without further ado, let's throw it away to an exclusive interview with the independent comic artist Leanore. Let's talk about what I saw most recently was your post on Twitter about artwork you're doing called Beautiful Monsters. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that, where your inspiration draws from, and how that came to be.
Yeah, well, originally, it kind of came from, I was looking through a sketchbook the other day and I saw an eye that I had drawn, which is pretty common, but this one was different. It had two irises, one looking one way, one looking the other. And I kind of got weirdly inspired and wanted to do like a whole face. When I was done with the one whole face, I was like, well, why don't I do more faces with weird eyeball configurations? And by the time I was done, I had this whole rainbow, and then I found myself wanting to, now I'm already working on like pin-up versions of the same characters. I'm just trying to figure out how odd I want their bodies to be. Like, do I want them to have extra appendages, tails? Like, which way am I going to go with that? But I don't know if it's going to develop into anything that would actually have a storyline, but it's definitely a fun series of art, I guess, would be the best way to put it. And it for all I know, I may end up working these little lady creatures into one of my comic books later, but for now, it's just fun to just do beautiful, like, they're beautiful women. Individually, all of their features are very beautiful, but they're just in unconventional configurations, I guess. So I'm kind of pushing the limits of what people will actually find aesthetically pleasing or what they'll find just absolutely disturbing. And apparently I'm hit and miss on some. The ones that I thought would bother people the most don't, apparently, and the ones that I thought would be fairly, chill are apparently more upsetting than I was prepared for.
Right, and I'm a horror guy, so whenever I looked at them, I thought they were pretty cool. But I saw that you also transferred them into like merchandise and stuff. Like I saw shirts and blankets and stuff like that, which I thought was kind of
Yeah, I have them up on my Redbubble store, and I'm kind of getting better about being picky as to how they're formatted. But it has merchandise available with all of the individual faces as well as them together in kind of a pattern. Which I thought also looked cool. That's something I haven't really played with much until recently, was making repeating patterns out of my artwork. And it's kind of boring when it's the same symbol or the same face. But when I sat there and I had 5 of them, I was like, I could make some interesting patterns with this. And I actually recently got it. There's an exclusive design that actually says Beautiful Monsters on it that's only available on Amazon right now. It's just a charcoal gray shirt with all 5 faces and the branding, but it's kind of neat to have that exclusively on Amazon for whoever to stumble upon. I don't think anybody's stumbled upon it yet, but hey, they're still kind of special.
Right. If they listen to this podcast, maybe they'll look it up and then they'll stumble upon it for you.
Absolutely. They should just need to type in Beautiful Monsters. I think the brand it's listed under is Art Life by Leanore, but it's there. It's loose. Loose on Amazon.
And we do also want to talk about today your comic Troll Smasher, like how you came up with the idea for that, and we'll get into some other things with that. But I know that's kind of like your main thing art-wise is this comic that you've been working on. But first, I want to ask you, Leanore, and all the listeners as well, have you ever wanted to just snap something out of existence like Thanos? Maybe all those secret photos that got leaked, that childhood bully who stole your lunch money, or the hundreds of creepy movies that stole hours of your time that you can never get back? You need the Ultra Eraser. Packaged to look like your everyday eraser, but so much more. The Ultra Eraser doesn't just stop at erasing pencil, chalk, or ink. It can also erase bad memories, foul-smelling odors, traffic jams, and even people. Let's make that super aggressive or annoying people to boot. Visit ultraeraser.com for more details and enter the promo code REXYDEALS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. That's ultraeraser.com. More than your average eraser.
That is my next big project that is in development is the Troll Smasher comic. I've always been a fan of comic books, and the fantasy genre has kind of been close to my heart, one way or another, whether it be through traditional literature or, graphic novels, what have you. And I really, really remember vividly these gorgeous watercolor paintings that were based on the Conan the Barbarian stories that were in a pizza place here in town that's called Conan's Pizza. When I was young, I went there with my parents and I just stared at the artwork, and the whole restaurant was like Conan comic themed. There was like arcade games, so it was very nostalgic for me to think back on. So when I was sitting there like, what kind of comic do I want to make? I knew I wanted to make one. All I could think of was like Sonia, Conan, that kind of genre, so to speak. And I just started drawing around and throwing some ideas around, and I came up with Callista, and it just sort of spiraled. I found myself filling up this notebook full of just random ideas that are actually kind of meshing together in a way that makes sense. And now I've got, more books than I think I'll ever be able to write just floating around in my head as concepts at the moment. So I'm just trying to calm myself down, not get ahead of myself, because I want the first to be just a solo endeavor. That way, if it fails, I can't try to blame anybody else but myself, If for no other reason than because I didn't try to collaborate or bring other people in on the project. I'll know that if it fails, it's all me. Or if it succeeds, I'll be able to say, hey, well, I do know how to do all of the parts of this. Now maybe I can afford to get somebody else involved. So maybe the writing's a little bit better, or, the covers better, maybe get some pen-ups involved. But I don't want to have to worry about, not that I don't work well with others. I'm sure I can, and I have before. But for something like this, I don't want to get too over controlling and it affect a friendly relationship I have with another artist or a writer or something like that. Since this is my first big project, I know I'm going to get a little crazy picky about some things, and I'd rather be mad at myself than anybody else. So that
definitely makes sense. That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, that was actually what I was going to ask next, was how far along you were in the process. And also maybe you can give, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it or not, but if you are, maybe you can give like a brief synopsis for what this comic's going to be about for the listeners.
Well, the idea, and I have the entire first book locked in as far as plot points. My concern is that I might have to split it into two books, which would be fine. I just don't want to make one book too big and a little too much, in case it does suck and nobody wants it. I don't want to invest 120 pages in it. But right. I need to try to find a good wrap-up point. I don't like the idea of it being a cliffhanger situation because, well, what if it does flop? Then the people who did like it, if I'm not able to keep going, will at least still have some sort of a sense of closure. But I want to be able to continue it, and I don't want to, end it too harshly. But I also don't want to leave it too open-ended. So that's where I'm at. I'm figuring out that edge of it. But I've got a lot of the base writing down. I'm working on the world-building part because I don't want to try to do that as I go along. I want to make sure I have, maps and stuff figured out for consistency reasons, I guess. I don't want her to be traveling one direction, going somewhere, and then be going the opposite direction to the same place later and have somebody figure that out and nitpick about it later, because I know it'll be me. It'll bother me. Right. I'll figure it out later, and I'll be fixated on it, and I'll want to redo the whole thing. So I'm trying to go backwards, I guess. Now that I've got the story laid out, I want to kind of visualize how everything's laid out and the land she'll travel in, what it's going to look like, I guess. So the core world building. I've got a lot of the creatures and stuff figured out in my head. So now I'm just doing all of the main visual concept work, and then I'm going to go through and do all of the detailed writing out. So hopefully I'll be able to get all that done in a pretty good timeline. I'm not trying to rush myself per se, but I'm not super far along. I've got it all locked in my head. I'm just trying to translate it into things I can show people. I've got Callista locked in perfectly. My main character, there's nothing about her I'm changing except for maybe costume choices.
Right.
So that's at least good. I've got that far.
Well, that's good. And it's like they always say, good things always come to those who wait. So anybody who's excited about it, by the time you release the final product, will hopefully give them something that their excitement lives up to.
Yeah, I don't want to let people down. I also don't want to overhype it too much, but I am really excited about it myself. Like, if I want it to be something I would be excited to stumble upon as a consumer. So I'm trying to balance it all out. I don't want it to be too serious in tone, but I also don't want it to be too funny all the time.
Right, and as a creator, you kind of have to be excited about your own work too, because if you're not,
yeah, because if I'm not excited about it, nobody else is going to care.
Exactly.
But I'm trying to keep it kind of simple and focus on the fact that the first book is going to, well, the first story I'm telling is going to be how she gets the title Soul Smasher. And there's potential for me to do other stories that involve this character that aren't technically part of the Soul Smasher mythology, but that's me getting ahead of myself again. Like, I'm prepared to take this really far, but if I don't get the chance to, I'd be okay with that as well. But I've got a lot kicking around. People really like her. I can really make them tired of her.
Right. That's almost like you turning it into like a whole internal universe, so to speak, with characters and stuff like that, which is also pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it's going in my head, and I have to try to remind myself that I haven't even physically gotten the first book done. I can't be sitting here planning something that happens in a completely different universe for this character if I'm not even done here. Like, that's a little lofty and ridiculous. But the first story is going to be the basic kind of thing, and I think I cheated, but I'm actually kind of proud of this. One of my least favorite things when I'm reading something is that clunky exposition where you have to explain things to the reader.
Right.
And my way of getting around that is I wrote it to where when this particular story starts, our main character has absolute and total amnesia to the point where the only thing she actually knows is her name. She doesn't even understand the purpose of clothing at this point, like totally infantile brain thing. She's running on pure instinct. So the readers aren't getting things explained to them in a clunky way. We're watching this person figure things out, and that's how we're understanding it as a reader. I say we're, like I'm not the one writing it, but
yeah, but you'll be reading it as you're writing it too, so you're kind of both.
Yeah, I'll be kind of trying to explain it to myself through my character. Like, how does this work? What is this? And then one of my favorite parts is the main comedy is going to come from her trying to understand how different creatures interact socially, and because she's new, and there's going to be obviously some dynamics in between the different clans and species she comes across, she won't understand why some of them don't get along or why they do get along better than others. And she's going to ask some really inappropriate questions that sometimes when she probably shouldn't, but she doesn't understand why that's wrong. So that's the main source of comedy for me. But it's also going to be a source of some of the darker, like, things. Because the character, Calista, is physically invulnerable. So I'm playing up the amnesia as her weak point, so to speak, because you get frustrated if you don't know who you are, where you came from, or why all these things have or are facts about you, kind of a thing. Even her figuring out that she's physically invulnerable is kind of a weird moment for her. And that's how I want her to be relatable. I want it to be escapism, but also relatable. Like, of course it's escapism. Nobody's actually physically invulnerable. That's just weird. But relatable into the fact that everybody's kind of screwed up in the head. We've all got our issues. I wanted to make it to where you kind of want to be her because she's a badass, but you also kind of feel like you already are her because you can relate to her identity crisis and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm trying to balance that. I don't want to be too emotionally appealing because I know a lot of people don't dig that, but I also want to be, somewhat in the middle. I want to appeal to as many different demographics as possible while still being badass and having my main characters tits out half the time.
Right. And I think, I mean, judging from what you just told me from like the brief little synopsis you have going on there, it sounds really interesting. So I think a lot of people will want to check it out.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping if for nothing else, the premise will be intriguing enough to get people interested. Then I just got to keep them up. That'll be the hard part.
Now, I know art is not your only thing that you tackle as well. I also know that you also have your own Twitch stream where you do some gaming. Why don't you talk about that for your listeners?
Well, I don't actually do gaming on Twitch. I actually do art on Twitch.
That's my fault. I think I saw a YouTube video where you did gaming, and I probably just got it mixed up.
Well, I mean, I have on Twitch, I've played some Flash games, but my laptop isn't super capable at the moment, so it's not. If I were to try to play a really fancy game on my laptop and stream it, it would be the choppiest experience for everybody involved. Not that I don't play video games, I genuinely do, but for the most part, all of my live streaming events on YouTube or whatever will mostly be me talking about art, or I occasionally will play my ukulele and sing, depending on how full the open hat kind of thing is. I've had my live streams compared to an artist on a street corner with an easel set up and like their musical instruments with the case open kind of a thing. But I don't have to be outside to do it. I can do it in the comfort of my own home.
And I mean, it is pretty original because when you really think about it, a lot of like streamers and stuff are doing the video games. So by you focusing more on like artwork and giving people kind of a behind the scenes on your art, it helps you stand out.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to draw attention to what is actually a pretty large community of artists and creatives on Twitch. I was actually shocked to find out that Bob Ross has a whole channel. In fact, if you go to one of my live streams before I start, my channel is usually hosting the Bob Ross stream. So it's going to be him or his son or one of his certified instructors painting before I get going. I always kind of feel bad because some of my viewers will get really into what he's painting and then it will cut out and go to me. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Now you get
more entertaining. Yeah, pretty much. I always feel a little bad. So I don't think I'm quite as entertaining as Bob, but I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I'm actually there's performing artists, musicians and stuff all over Twitch. I'm pretty impressed by the number of underappreciated creatives on that platform. With anything, I can get attention to the whole genre on there. That would be great.
Yeah, that is awesome. Now, you mentioned a minute ago about playing a ukulele. What made you decide to start learning that instrument?
Well, I started playing the guitar when I was like 9. Didn't really take lessons. It was all like a self-taught thing. I just looked stuff up and like forced myself to figure it out. And I never got like virtuoso good, but I got enough to play with it and it was fun. And the one thing that made it difficult was that I have small hands and it got kind of difficult to play some of the chords because of how wide most guitar necks really are with the 6 strings. Somebody at some point suggested, well, why don't you try the ukulele? And it actually wasn't that long ago. It was a few years ago, really, that my parents got me my first ukulele. It was a cheap thing, but I immediately took to it because the chords are similar. Obviously, there's only 4 strings, but it was a pretty easy transition to go from the guitar to the ukulele. And it's easier for me to play because it's so much smaller.
Right. And it's kind of a cool icebreaker too. Like if someone's like, what instrument do you play? And you're like, oh, the ukulele. Cause I feel like people probably wouldn't hear that all the time. So it's also interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's the most common one when you hear people talk about what instruments they play. I mean, I could lead with guitar, but that's pretty pop.
Yeah, a lot of people play guitar, but yeah, that's why I brought it up. Cause I was like, I heard you say ukulele. I'm intrigued now. So we got to talk about it.
Yeah, it's fun. And one of the things that I've been trying to do is look up songs that might not be intended to sound that way and kind of make them sound a little more folksy and weird than they would be. Like change the arrangement, as it were. Get creative with it. Anything that'll keep me from getting a copyright strike while I'm doing a musical cover.
Exactly.
I was actually singing Creedence Clearwater Revival by request on one of my live streams recently, and my viewers got a notification that said some of the live stream might be muted due to copyright restrictions. And the only thing we could think is that the automated software honestly thought that it was the actual song and not just me, which was weird because I could have sworn that song was played on something other than just YouTube.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think they do that a lot.
Really on key. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll pick up on.
That was worse with YouTube though, not Twitch. But apparently Twitch was still like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, YouTube will catch you in a lot of stuff. YouTube is very. I think it's just whatever software they use picks up on pretty much anything.
It's very aggressive.
Are there any other art projects you're working on as well, or is it just really your main focus is the Beautiful Monsters and Troll Smasher right now?
Those are my main focuses. I'm also still working on getting the fulfillment completed for my art book campaign that ended a little while back, but I'm not really doing a whole lot with that other than just trying to get it fulfilled and get everybody what they asked for on that end. And those are my main focuses. I'm still doing commission work. I've got quite a few that I've been working on today as well. But I don't really have a whole lot I'm putting on my plate right this moment. I'm trying to restrict myself. I have one other project that I've recently decided might turn into just a novel with some extra illustrations, but I think I'm going to put that one on hold for a while so I get some other stuff caught up on.
Right. And for anyone who's listening that may not know, where can people find your work? If you have a website or a source that people can track you down.
I do. I'm almost always somewhere floating around on Twitter, which would be the @Leanore, Leanore. It's not spelled the way most people would spell it. But there's also Leanore.net, Leanore.net. I've been working on getting and keeping that more updated as well. So that'll be a good place to go to have all of the other places my stuff will be accounted for in one location.
And I want to backtrack a little bit. Earlier, you were mentioning about the Conan comics and that restaurant. Was that the first comic book that like drew you into comics, or was there something else that drew you in?
No, my dad actually had quite a few old X-Men comics and stuff when I was younger, and we watched the animated series. And my mom had Archie's and Betty and Veronica's and stuff, so I got the full wide experience when it was my parents were nerds, so I was kind of already exposed to it right out the gate, and it didn't seem weird. So it's kind of comic book, comic art, and the whole nerd culture has kind of just been part of my life the entire time. I can't really pinpoint a moment where it was just like I fell in love with it. I just don't ever remember not loving comic books. There's never a moment where they weren't something I was aware of and fond of deeply.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, for me, like, comics didn't even come into my life until, like, my later years, like, maybe late teens or, like, when I became an adult, because, I don't know, that stuff just wasn't around. Like, my parents didn't have that kind of stuff around, so it's cool to hear someone who was able to enjoy it right from the bat.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that my parents were kind enough to have me while they were still teenagers. They're still together, so go them. Having cool. Young parents is actually an advantage. They were still into marginally cool things most of my life. I didn't have to deal with the old people music and hobbies.
And when it comes to like the fantasy comics, were you strictly like the Conan, or did you delve into like maybe like ElfQuest or other like more independent, obscure fantasy?
Yeah. I loved all of them, to be honest. There hasn't been one that didn't just catch my attention. My favorite comic of all time is actually Dawn by Joseph Michael Lindsay. Basically anything with her in it. And I know, and that's fairly fantasy. It's got some sci-fi stuff going on. I love the Dawn Vampirella crossover. Those were great. The art is just top notch. She's one of my favorite artists. But I think with the Conan stuff, with that, it was the watercolors that I remember being in that restaurant. I don't know if they were just covers, because I don't remember really seeing them in the comics, but I know that they had the comic logo at the bottom. It may have just been posters for promotion. But that artwork is what made me go, that if I make a comic book, I want it to be that pretty. And I might not actually sit here and watercolor every page of my comic book, but the covers are at least going to be pretty. And they'll be by the same artist, even if they won't be the same style as the interior art. They'll be by the same artist.
Right. And that goes back to the Beautiful Monsters. I believe I saw that was done all in watercolor as well, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, they were watercolors. They were all individual watercolors, and I think 5x6 watercolor paper. And then I scanned them all up, cleaned up the white background so that they would be transparent on their merchandise. And, they translated pretty well. I was concerned that the lighter tones with the watercolor wouldn't scan well, but it actually scanned pretty well, and they looked much better than I was prepared for. I thought I was going to have to do some digital cleanup, and they pretty much scanned in as is and went straight to the web store, as it were.
That's really cool. All right, Leanore, that's about all the time we have today. But before we get off, I want to give you a chance again to throw out your links there for where people can find your work. Again, I know you did that earlier, but I'm going to throw it in again at the end, and like maybe leave links to your Twitter and your YouTube and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I've got links to all of the good stuff on my Twitter. So if you want to just head over to @LostLeanore, LOSTLEANORE, all one word. That's a good place to catch me. And if you don't feel like messing with Twitter, you can always go to Leanore.net, LEANORE.net. And that's where I'll have all the links to all the good stuff all around the net that has anything to do with my creative endeavors.
All right. Thank you, Leanore, for coming on the show. Good luck with your stream tonight. I'll try to swing by if I can, but thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.